Productivity. How can you work and study more efficiently to get more work done in less time? But by doing so, free up more time to do other fun stuff. So in this video, we'll go over my top 5 tips to being an efficient student. And very importantly, in the end of this video, we'll talk about how to actually implement those tips and techniques into your everyday life. So let's not waste any more time and get to tip number 1. Starting off with a really powerful one. Optimize deep work hours. Pick the morning hours or the evening hours or both, then schedule 2 to 3 hours and focus on deep work. Not talking to anyone, no phone, just you, some tea, and your thoughts. During the day, there's often a lot happening, especially when you live with your family, for example, or just share your accommodation with other people. There you can work on things that don't demand uninterrupted attention, like working on slides for a presentation, or going grocery shopping, doing sports, going to the gym, or doing group meetings with other people because, well, those are important since you will often be working with people in a group. But those things are fairly obvious and will come naturally, right? When working with other people or interacting with those, they will be awake during the day and will want to communicate with you. But the point is to really schedule those deep work hours, embrace them and try to avoid any kind of distraction. Again, get yourself some tea or coffee in the morning, then put on some nice calming music or rainforest sounds or whatever, and then start reading a paper, start working on a difficult coding assignment, or start working through the lecture material of the most difficult course. And in those 2 to 3 hours of really deep focus work in the mornings, for example, you will get as much work done as in 4 to 5 hours of interrupted work, which again are important obviously when working on group projects, but I think you will be impressed by yourself. Now, this scheduling or living by the calendar is in fact tip number 2. Time blocking. There's a thing called Parkinson's law, which pretty much just says that if you have a task that might take 1 hour and you give yourself the whole day for it, it will take the whole day. This technique is really simple in principle. You just reserve a certain time block for a general task. It doesn't require you to define the specific tasks for this one time block. So really just take your calendar of choice and start blocking out time. For example, in the mornings you will define 3 hours of deep work. That's it. Then you define 1 or 1.5 hours of time for cooking, then 2 more hours for working on lecture A, and then you have perhaps 1 more hour for working on a personal project. And this is perhaps a little bonus tip 2.5, also include a little buffer time slot, like 2 hours, which you ideally don't want to use, but in the case that you underestimate the time that you need for a specific subject, you still have those 2 hours. But ideally you don't want to use those for work, but you will use those for some fun activities. Now, this was just one example, right? You have to find the time slots that fit your lifestyle or your schedule that you can't manipulate, right? But you will find slots. You just have to take them seriously when you define those. Okay, so you have your deep work sessions and your other sessions for other subjects, but obviously it's not sustainable to completely work through 3 hours. So for that, I recommend using the Pomodoro Technique. This is a pretty known technique and pretty much just says that you have fixed cycles for work and then a break, right? The literature that this technique is based on recommends 25-5 sessions, but I personally like 50-10 sessions. For me, 50 minutes of work is pretty sustainable, and in those 10-minute break sessions, I can in fact actually do something that is useful, like, I don't know, do the laundry or make an appointment for a doctor and stuff like that. So very simple technique that goes a long way. But this is very important, the first session will probably not go so well. You might really need to force yourself in that first session. You might think that it is a waste of time or it is not working because you're constantly distracted by other things, but you really have to believe in yourself. Once you get into that state of flow, you will exceed your expectations. But this state of flow can definitely be interrupted by context switching. So try to be in the same context as long as possible. Try to work on the same subject as long as possible. Or in other words, try to minimize context switching. Do you see how all the tips come together and assist each other? Time blocking and scheduling your day is really helpful for minimizing context switching. For example, let's quickly look at how I used to schedule my week and minimize context switching. I had 2 days for university work, right? And I there tried to strictly separate each courses as best as I could, right? On one day I worked on 2 courses. When I worked on one course, I watched the lecture, I took my notes, I worked on the homework assignment, and then I had a break and then switched the context to another course. Then I had one YouTube day, and then I had 1.5 days for actual work for my job that pays the bills. And then I also had 1 or 1.5 days of random stuff that had to be done. Those days are a bit messy and include lots of little stuff where you just can't minimize context switching. For example, doing the laundry, doing chores, making doctor appointments, scheduling a holiday, meal prepping, and stuff like that. But what makes this process a lot easier is to really write down the top 1 to 3 things you really need to get done the day before. And this, in fact, is tip number 5. This has several advantages, obviously. One, for example, is that you just don't feel that lost in the morning, which might happen. And it is really helpful for your deep work sessions if you schedule those in the morning. You just sit down and already know what you want to do. It also frees your mind in the evening, so you don't lay in bed and aimlessly think about what you have to get done the next day and perhaps even get anxiety or just don't get your proper sleep. If there simply are too many things you have to get done the next day, you will get nothing done and be lost. For example, I like to write down everything on my whiteboard. For example, my top priority would be get Deep Learning 1 done. Watch the lecture, do the homework, go through every exercise, and then I have a second top priority task, which is to go grocery shopping, for example. Then I also have working on my deep reinforcement learning project, where I have to fix bug A and add feature X. But if for whatever reason I really don't get that project's work completely done, right? I don't implement feature A, I won't be stressed out because I have planned that and I have my buffers and everything will be fine. And for those of you who want to also use this whiteboard, which I personally really like, I will leave you the link for that in the description below. Okay, so I can bombard you guys with as many tips and tricks that are really useful and also intertwine with each other a bit, but that won't really help you to actually implement those into your everyday life. So how do you really integrate those into your everyday life? And I would definitely say, take your time, otherwise it's way too overwhelming. You really need to have the discipline in the beginning, in the first 1 or 2 months, to implement some of those techniques into your everyday life until it becomes a regular habit. It's really better to start with small steps than doing nothing. And it's also better to do that than trying to do everything and succeeding at nothing. For example, start with this time blocking stuff. Look into your calendar, look at certain time slots where you could regularly reserve time slots for a specific task or for uni work or whatever, and try to stick to those for as long as possible. The more time and discipline you invest in the beginning to really stick to those time slots, you will then see how much structure and rhythm you'll start implementing into your life. And then you will have other students asking you,
how are you always up to date with the lectures and still have time for so much sports and watching anime?
So yeah, that was it for this video. I started implementing those into my life and was that student that could do sports and watch anime and still be up to date with the lectures. And I hope that those techniques that I use for myself and help me out can also help you out and bring value to you. And if you have found those tips interesting or helpful, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe for future videos. If you're studying an engineering or maths degree or something similar, then I have a video for you where I go over the best way how to study for exams. And you'll be able to click that right up here. And with that said, I believe we are in the end. And as always, thank you very, very much for watching. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!